Catherine, the Princess of Wales, makes an incredible return to form as she undergoes her first royal engagement of 2024 at the King's Trooping the Color. We also have Spain celebrating 10 years of King Felipe on the throne with some very sweet messages from his daughters. We also have Royal Ascot, the Order of the Garter ceremony with a very special new edition and so much other royal news. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of the Crown Report. My name is Brittany. On this program, we try to talk about some of the major royal news stories of the week. And of course, this has been a very busy week, especially for the British, because this is actually one of their busiest times of years. Usually it starts with Trooping the Color, then goes to the Garter ceremony on Monday, and then the rest of the week is Royal Ascot. And of course, there is amazing royal fashion to look at. But I think the most exciting moment, of course, was the return of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. And I really think the entire message that accompanied this picture, I think, is one really that offers a message of hope to those dealing with cancer. Because despite the torrential rain that occurred during Trooping the Colors, really the world breathed a sigh of relief by seeing Catherine as she made her really triumphant return to the international stage. She looked absolutely fantastic. Despite, I'm sure, the treatments that she's undergoing that are very stressful and everything, she looked really, really incredible. And this has been a really, really rough 6 months for her because she has been recovering not only from major surgery, but also from the cancer treatments. And the world found out exactly 3 months ago on March 15th, and she announced her return on June 15th. That it occurred on that anniversary, I think, is really, really intentional. And in her statement that she would attend Trooping the Color, Catherine said in part, "I am making good progress. But as anyone going through chemotherapy will know, there are good days and bad days. On those bad days, you feel weak, tired, and you have to give in to your body resting. But on the good days, when you feel stronger, you want to make the most of feeling well. My treatment is ongoing and will be for a few more months. On the days I feel well enough, it is a joy to engage with school life, spend personal time on the things that give me energy and positivity, as well as starting to do a little work from home. I'm learning how to be patient, especially with uncertainty, taking each day as it comes, listening to my body and allowing myself to take this much needed time to heal. Thank you so much for your continued understanding and to all of you who have so bravely shared your stories with me." And I think this statement sums up the struggle with cancer so well. There are good days, there are bad days. There are days when you feel like there's absolutely nothing wrong and that you can get on with the things that you do all the time. And then there are days where you really feel the weight of that terrible diagnosis. I think it was a great encouragement to see Catherine out and looking essentially the same as she did when we last saw her. You could probably perhaps see that she's lost some weight, that there seems to be some exhaustion around her features. But overall, she looked the same. She is getting on, and there's hope in that, I think. That even though the cancer diagnosis is incredibly serious and is incredibly taxing, it's not always necessarily a death sentence. It could limit your life or perhaps change your appearance in ways that you never anticipated. But there is little doubt that there's a lot of life and hope in dealing with cancer. Undoubtedly, cancer does kill people every day, but sometimes it only holds you back if you let it. One of the greatest feelings that we have as humans is hope. If you hope and desire for the future, if you have a positive outlook, it can help you deal with an illness. I remember reading this, and I can't remember quite where I read it, but it talked about that those who were even in concentration camps and death camps during the Holocaust, those who found meaning in life, found hope, were more likely to live through the ordeals. Those who gave up died faster. Now, well, of course, that is an extreme example. I think that battling cancer sometimes works in a similar way. There are things you can't avoid, but a positive outlook and hope for the future is a powerful motivator. And I think that's what we see in Catherine. Yes, she's being treated for cancer, diagnosis that seems just so shocking for a woman as young and fit as she is, but she's still doing what she can, participating in school activities with her children or enjoying time with her family. And when she's feeling up to it, working, which is just an entirely different job than the rest of the world. And I want to take time to discuss this a bit because I think one of the elephants in the room and the thing that people have glommed onto, especially with the hashtag where is Kate, and I'll be doing a different video on Royal News Network later, kind of discussing a new article from Newsweek about the Sussex Squad, and of course, the hashtag where is Kate and the connection there. The thing is why Catherine disappeared, and people were so shocked by it in so many ways. They're like, well, how can this woman who's photographed all the time, how can she disappear? And the reality is when it comes to royals, you really only see them when they're working. If you think about it, vast majority of the time you see them, it's when their photos are being taken while they're undergoing royal engagements. Catherine has not been on any royal engagements, ergo, there are no pictures. And I feel like people just don't understand that yes, there's a paparazzi culture that exists in the UK, but it has very much since obviously the heyday of Diana. People still think, I think, and sometimes of the early 2000s, late 90s, and that kind of Diana craze and all the young Hollywood craze and everything. And there was a paparazzis out all the time. And there was just this huge paparazzi culture. But that doesn't totally exist anymore, in part because celebrities now have social media outlets. So they post their own stuff, sometimes embarrassing things, much more embarrassing, ironically, than sometimes you would catch on a paparazzi camera. So it's sort of this ironic and kind of interesting situation where the culture has changed to the point where there's just not as much paparazzi. In addition to that, especially after the cancer diagnosis, no self respecting journalist in the UK would publish a picture. And all the journalists know essentially that any pictures caught on the royals on their off time are generally not published by the mainstream publications. And that's simply because there is a gentleman's agreement between, again, the palace and the press on to when they can publish certain pictures. Yes, sometimes things get through. Obviously, we have Catherine and William at the Windsor Farm Market. And I think sometimes the palace knew the bigger announcement was coming. So they wanted to give people that little look of Catherine and that she was doing well overall, because you do have good days and bad days. I mean, obviously, cancer is very debilitating, especially when you're going through treatments, but there are days where you feel fine and like your normal self. And there are days where you're like, you just want to be dead to the world. And so Catherine was having a good day, which is awesome. And that's why a video was taken. And those videos are often taken, or pictures are taken, by members of the public, not always the paparazzi. And so there's just isn't really that paparazzi culture. And so there were no photographers following her, especially after her reveal of the cancer diagnosis. I think there was even a greater emphasis on being professional when it comes to journalism. And nobody really wanted to take that risk of grabbing a picture of her and becoming the target of the public, who would be incredibly, incredibly outraged. And obviously, as well, Catherine, I love this picture of her. I think she's looking off. And I think there's a lot of, again, hope here. It's a hopeful picture. I think she looks contemplative, and she's ready, I'm sure, to be out of the woods when it comes to her treatments, but things are still ongoing. She still has sounds like at least a couple more treatments to go, at the very least, if not more. And so she is slowly getting out of this, but she is doing well. And so I wanted to leave on this section with an opinion piece by the Telegrapher and by Alison Pearson. And it says 2 words: thank you. Thank you, Princess of Wales, for being an absolute trooper and attending Trooping the Color on a cold, gray day when lesser mortals with your illness would have stayed home, tucked up in their jams. Thank you for sacrificing the privacy that is so much needed to get you back to full health. Thank you for such a show of support for the king, who is not a well man, on his official birthday, and for giving a boost to the wider royal family, which has sorely lacked star power since you withdrew from public life in January to have major surgery. Thank you for channeling the genuine beauty of Audrey Hepburn in that wow of a white dress with a jaunty outsized stripy black and white bow. You are our fair lady. And I love that sentiment as well, because Catherine is the star power of the monarchy. Make no doubt, she is the star power. And yes, her star will diminish over time as her children get older and they start getting married and they start dating, and obviously they do those things in reverse. But so many ways, the Wales' kids, when they become old enough, will become the new superstars of the British monarchy. But when it comes to the most popular member, the most visible member, the member that people just gravitate to the most, it is Catherine. And so without her star power, yes, in some ways, the British royal family is diminished. And yes, I know she is only the wife of the heir and everything like that. But the reality is, when it comes to the royals and royal watching overall, we tend to watch the women more because we like the fashion, we like the tiaras, and the men just don't have that sparkle. And yes, they do have obviously gravitas, but it's just different in how people watch the royals, and they definitely do watch the ladies very differently than the men. And so I think Catherine, again, looks incredible and amazing here, and I am so excited to see her continuing to undergo more royal engagements. She'll slowly add on some more as the summer goes on. I anticipated and I speculated that she'd probably get more full time back to royal duties in the fall. And I think that that timeline still holds because she can do a couple things over the summer. But when August comes around, usually the royals, that's their month off. And this is true for pretty much all royals throughout Europe. They slowly start to slow down time late July, early August. And so I imagine we won't see Catherine much of August. We'll maybe see her a couple of times through the rest of this month and July. Imagine, and I'm just going to say, I think I see her going to Wimbledon. She does absolutely love tennis. And again, it's something that can give her a little boost because you do need those things that you love and you enjoy. That's what I love that she said. I need to do things that give me positivity and happiness. And yes, you do need those things because you need those distractions. And so I'm sure that would be a really long day. But given that it's mostly sitting down and watching, I imagine she'd probably be okay, but depend on when her treatment is. And obviously, we have the state opening of parliament after the elections later in July, too. I don't anticipate her going to that either, but that is a possibility. I don't anticipate the state visit from Japan. I know some people had been offering that. I just don't see that being an option, especially I don't think the state banquet, maybe a small engagement if that's possible, but I don't foresee her doing much there. And especially if it requires standing for a long time or doing different things that she may not be comfortable quite with yet. We don't know what her cancer is. So it might be something that impacts how she eats and those sorts of things, or the reaction when she eats something. So that is something that she needs to take into account. She needs to do what is best for her. And so I am so glad to see Catherine back. And again, I really feel like for those who are going through cancer, I think Catherine offers that bit of hope that there is life after cancer. And I know she is not in best form right now, but I'm super excited again to see her come back, to see her doing so well. And I can't wait to see her on more royal engagements coming up here oh so soon. And if you enjoy what we do here on the Crown Report, feel free to give us a follow or a subscribe. We would absolutely love to have you back. We do these weekly. The plan is to get them on Tuesday, get them out on Tuesday. So I am so excited for these because these, again, encompass so much royal news that you might hear or may not hear throughout the week. And the next big event we have, of course, is Trooping the Color. And obviously, we are so excited that Catherine would be able to attend this event. I had suggested that this might be what happens. And I know we are all so happy that Catherine could attend this event. Of course, I suggested that that could happen. And first, we have out of the palace here the Duchess of Edinburgh and the Duke of Kent there sitting right next to her, and Lady Louise in the front in the white and lavender. And then behind them, we have the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester and Sir Timothy Lawrence, who very much suffered later in the day, let me tell you. And then we have their majesties, the King and Queen, followed by, of course, Catherine and the Wales's children. And this is such a special event. It is King Charles's official birthday celebrations with the Horse Guard Parade. We also have Prince William, Prince Edward, and Princess Anne over there on horseback. And here come the Waleses, which is so sweet. So good to have Catherine back. And so this Horse Guard Parade is made up of the regiments of the Household Division. The event began in 1748, but the first official parade was performed during the reign of King Charles II in the late 1600s. And so you see the Waleses getting out of the carriage here. And my understanding, at least from part of it, what I heard is that they would do these parades in part so that the different regiments would actually be able to see and know each other's colors. An interesting note is that Queen Victoria only attended one Trooping the Color, which seems very on brand for Queen Victoria. And that was in 1895 when it was held at Windsor Castle. So Her Majesty Queen Victoria just didn't really want to be bothered much. Historically, trooping occurs on whatever Saturday falls between June 11th and June 17th, though that changed in 2017 when it was held on June 8th. It was also originally held at a different time of year, but was moved to June to hopefully capture some good weather, which we shall see did not happen this time. And so this year, the royal family gathered for the trooping event. King Charles obviously rode to the parade in a carriage, which we saw, and this was due to his health. And so he usually rides on horseback, and this year he did not. So you actually can see in the video here, you have Prince William off to His Majesty's right-hand side there on horseback. Prince Edward is in the green sash, and then right next to Edward there is Anne, who you probably can't see. And there are the Waleses watching from the window. Now, It used to be that I think more of the royal family was actually at the windows watching. We've seen the Tyndall children, the Phillips children, but I just guess don't think that's happening anymore. I just sort of hate this pared down trooping event because I enjoyed seeing the whole royal family. Now, obviously, we do have a Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. We have the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, Duke of Kent, Sir Timothy Lawrence. But I think there was just something so fun about having all the different royal children together. And of course, the antics, you had Savannah Phillips covering the mouth of Prince George. And maybe that's part of the reason why we don't have these big celebrations anymore. But I still do really miss them. Love this. We have Charlotte sitting in her mother's lap, which I think is so sweet. You could just tell, especially Louis seemed very, very attentive to mom. And so I don't know if this was sort of the babiness in him or just protective over what she's gone through this year, but he very much wanted to be on mother's lap as well. And so he was on his mummy's lap too here. And so Catherine here is chatting with Louis and then Charlotte over there as well. And I think that it would just be fun for them if they had more children there other than, the siblings they see all the time. Not that they don't love their siblings, and you can see the weather here is changing. Queen Camilla is putting her scarf on because it gets dicey here in a minute, guys. It's real dicey. And so it was just, again, so fun to see everyone. I don't know why the Earl of Wessex wasn't there. He maybe had some school assignments or finals or something, but it was kind of sad not to see him. And of course, the Duke of Kent, no Duchess of Kent, she is still alive, but he is 88. She's retired from royal duties. And so the return of Catherine, and she is sitting down here and Louis gets on her lap, is just a great relief. I did notice that she actually is wearing her Jimmy Choo roomy 85 heels instead of 100. So 85 centimeters instead of 85 millimeters instead of 100. So I feel like she still is recovering because this is not a day I would say that's a super long standing because obviously right now she's sitting down. I don't know if that's a combination of obviously your feet can hurt if you're in heels, but it also could be that she's recovering and still somewhat uncomfortable. And so it seemed like she really enjoyed the event, was glad to be back, and she was paying great attention, you could tell. And of course, people want to see her, but she knows what her role is, which is to be seen. And I love, again, she's adjusting. So Louis can sit there. It looks like he gave her some sort of book or like a program or something that they can look at so he can just hang out with Mummy. He's definitely Mummy's boy, let's just say. And just to clarify, because I know some people have said this and I've stated this in a different video too, I don't think her attendance and this being her first big public appearance really diminishes from King Charles's birthday celebrations or anything like that, because if he's being honest and he knows this, Catherine is the most popular royal. And so her popularity bleeds onto his. So why not have her there? And I think honestly as well, guys, King Charles is very much aware of his stance now. And I think he is older and mature in a lot of ways. And so he is sort of able to say, you know what? I'm just going to let Catherine have this moment with me too. Nick, she can see kind of where they're at on the dais in comparison to the balcony there. And I actually got tickets for technically Catherine's Colonel review if she had had it earlier this June. Maybe she'll do it next year because I thought it would be funner to do that one because it's a bit easier to get tickets to that one. And if I'm going to go to trooping, I want to go on to look at the balcony. And as I understand it, although I have not been in there, and look, they closed the window. There, they closed the window. They opened it back up before too long, but it's kind of funny. Anyways, and you can see the winds kicking up. And my understanding, and I believe this is true, so you can only go down to the balcony if you're on what's they call the Royal Mall. And it's Mall, M-A-L-L, but they pronounce it kind of miles. So people like complain. They're like, oh, you're saying Royal Mile. That's in Edinburgh. I'm like, no, it's like Royal Mall. But they say like, they don't say mall, like a hard mall like we do in the States, a mile. And I got to say, I love the marching band on horseback. I just find that so entertaining. And you can see there with the, they're not Clydesdales, but the big draft horses, their stirrups are actually connected to the guy's boots. So can you imagine? Oh, and here's the storm you see, guys. It is rolling on in. If you are from the South or Midwest in the United States, you know what those clouds mean. It means nothing good. And they again moved this parade so that could be in the summer, but of course, summer weather, you do have the issue there with potential rain. And as the storm kind of comes in, you actually can see all the horses kind of getting a little spooked here. And so you have Princess Anne, Prince Edward, and Prince William all over there. And Princess Anne seems to her horse seemed to be having a hard time. But I think just if you haven't really experienced it, I know it happens in other corners of the world, like in Asia and stuff. But when a storm like really, really blows in with like a lot of wind and just like it goes from like 1 to 11 like that, I can imagine that it would spook the horses. And so it is starting to rain here. And so King Charles and Queen Camilla are getting in the carriage. And I had forgot to mention when Catherine and the kids got out of the carriage, I thought it was so cute that they got out of the carriage and then they lined up and looked at mom as she got out of the carriage. So it's like they are very well behaved and you can tell disciplined in a good way. There's and the culture has gotten weird on some things, but I think this is a family that does discipline in a very positive way that results in positive changes. I love that Louis, I think, is like, I don't know what to feel about this right now. So they all look so cute in the carriage there. And of course, if you can't tell already, it is really starting to pour. Oh my gosh, I felt so sorry for them. I felt so sorry for them. And William and Anne and Edward all got soaked, and so did big shout out to Sir Timothy Lawrence because he sat on the opposite side of the carriage. You can actually see it here. So the first carriage, you can't see anybody because they're all under the covering. But this second one right here, Sir Timothy Lawrence, he's just sitting there in his top hat, letting the rain pound his head. So you got to give mad props to Sir Timothy Lawrence there. He is definitely a team player. We have Catherine and the kids, and unfortunately, because of the rain, the carriage actually got very, very foggy. And so you couldn't see it quite as well, which is a bit disappointing for sure. And so the kids, though, were waving, I thought, at the photographers, which I thought was kind of cute. And then here, Charles is continuing to look at, and here he sees his grandkids. And of course, he's inspecting the troops as well. And you could tell, too, some of the horses with the rain and the slipperiness, I think, of the cobblestones and everything, we're struggling a bit. And so here we have Sir Timothy Lawrence, who I'm sure is absolutely soaking, sopping wet, with Lady Louise, the Duchess of Edinburgh, the Duke of Kent, and the Duke of Gloucester. So they are all, and here we have the balcony appearance, and everybody walks out, and it is so exciting. It is very cool to see the balcony appearances, I will have to say. I think it's amazing. They opened all three doors. But I will have to say, and this is just another thing, is one of the biggest frustrations with like the outcome of COVID, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and everything has been the diminished balcony. I don't like the smaller balcony appearance. And so the entire family only have working royals and some of their children. And guys, I find this disappointing. Perhaps they could adjust who were on the balcony, but I always enjoyed seeing everyone. And you actually do see in one of the video clips I have here, which I think I kept in, you can actually see some of the Kents in the background, the window to the far, if you're looking at the palace, the far right. I had to think of it. I had to do this, to make sure I got my right and my left right. And I think adding the whole family would be good as a balcony. Just seems just not as exciting without everyone and different interactions, of course, with people that you don't get to see all the time. And obviously, I think some of this, unfortunately, comes from trying to avoid the Harry and Meghan situation. And they said they were allegedly not invited at all. But I could see that the other reason being they were not invited on the balcony, ergo, to them, that's not being invited at all. And so I just find that kind of sad because I really enjoyed seeing everyone on the balcony. And while I agree, obviously, Harry and Meghan, they're not working royals, they're sort of the pariahs, not great to leave in the let them come, but I think it would have been great to see them. I love all the Waleses waving, Louis waving with two hands. I thought was hysterical because one's not enough. You got to wave with two. And then they start seeing God Save the King. And you notice Charlotte kind of whacks Louis to make sure he has his arms flat down at his sides. Like you can feel Charlotte, she's very prim and proper. You got to, her arms are like straight down at her sides, not moving. And so she is very much the prim and proper princess there. She'll be a great Princess Royal one day. And here they are walking in. It's so good to see Catherine and the kids, of course. Love seeing the kids anytime we get to see them is amazing. And then we got this sweet moment at the very end with the Duchess of Edinburgh putting a hand on William's back. Now, I actually have a debate and I want to see what you guys think because as Sophie was walking out, you could see it and the initial interpretation I had is that she was, kind of giving him a pat on the back as encouragement. But as I look at it again, I wonder if she was about to maybe lose her footing or just wanted to steady herself and she's like, there's this big tall strapping lad right here. Why don't I just balance myself on him? Which I thought was I actually think guys that could actually be the case. But I love Trooping the Color. I've been to the coronation. I went to the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I'm kind of bummed I didn't go this year. But also, as well, like the reason I would have gone would be to see Catherine, and we didn't know if she would attend until the day before. So I'm kind of glad I didn't. Honestly, guys, from last year when I went to the coronation, that was a long, sort of miserable day. I mean, my day started at 3:30 in the morning. I didn't actually sit down to eat until 3:30 in the evening or 3:30 in the afternoon. And it rained most of the day. It didn't pound rain like this, but the nice thing is sometimes when a storm like that rolls through and then it's gone, you have blue skies, which happened here. The coronation wasn't like that. It was just a steady rain throughout the morning. And so I was just like, there's so many people, and it just got so crazy. And so I was like, you know what? I'm kind of glad I didn't go. I need a year break, guys. Next year, I am planning to go. I'm hoping to actually arrange a trip with a group of followers, hopefully around Trooping the Color. So if you guys are interested in that, keep an eye out for that. I have a tour company I have worked with, but there's another one that's more of a boutique one, which I may reach out and see what they can offer. It runs very differently, so I don't know quite how that work, but I'm very interested in arranging something that's around trooping because I love trooping, and it would just be fun to be with people because if you have to go to the bathroom, oh my gosh, there's a whole group of people there who can hold your spot. Because I go to trooping, guys, and I don't eat anything. I hardly drink anything for hours. For the coronation, it was like 12 plus hours. I took 2 sips of water so I could take, I think maybe I take medication every day, and I might have taken it in the evening the day before so I could drink the water that I needed to drink with it without having to drink a lot in the morning. But I had like 2 sips, then went down. So yes, complicated. It is so fun, guys. Really, really. But it's not easy either. All right, guys. Next, we have the Order of the Garter ceremony, and I'm so excited for this. This was founded by Edward III in 1348. It is the oldest and most senior royal order of knighthood in Britain. The sovereign has full control over who gets appointed to the order, and they are usually given to those who have a distinguished history of service to the nation or to the royal family directly. And you see, obviously, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, there she is waiting for obviously the members of the order to walk down, and here they come. Membership is restricted to only 24 living members or companions. They actually have 3 open spots right now, excluding the monarch and the Prince of Wales. There are also supernumerary knights and ladies, which includes members of the British royal family and foreign monarchs. If you remember, several years ago, King Wilhelm Alexander and King Philippe became members of the Order of the Garter and participated in this ceremony. So we got the addition of Queen Maxima and Queen Letizia of Spain there, which was so fun. The outfit includes a mantle, vestment, or robe made of velvet, a Tudor bonnet, a black velvet, a collar that's secured with ribbons, the Great George adornment, which is suspended from the collar, includes a 3-dimensional figure of St. George the Martyr on horseback slaying a dragon, and the garter, which is usually worn around the calf. And you see at official state visits, they actually wear the garter on their leg. And so you see this kind of weird leg thing. So it is something. Here we have Princess Anne, Prince William, and Prince Edward walking into the ceremony, of course, followed by their majesties. But this occasion was very special because it was the Duchess of Gloucester's first time as a member of the order. So she is one of the first married in royals who is far down the line of succession because usually they only appoint the Princess of Wales, whoever that happens to be, and the Queen. So this is very exciting for her. She received the order as part of her service to the crown, and this opens the door very excitedly for probably Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, to receive this order at some point. She and Edward just celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary today, and she has definitely been 100% a great and fantastic asset to the monarchy. So I can't wait to see that. Here we have Queen Camilla and King Charles leaving the service. And I love this sort of at the very end of the video, we get Sophie and William chatting because obviously Catherine would be down there on the steps with them. This is held at St. George's Chapel, obviously in Windsor Castle. And so I just love seeing Sophie there. Obviously it was a little blustery. She was trying to keep hold of her hat. But I thought her chatting with William there was very, very sweet. I think Sophie has become a great source of support, especially for William as Catherine's going through her diagnosis, probably with the kids and everything with going on. I think he's become a lot closer because of Harry and Meghan's behavior, become closer to other members of his family like Sophie, which he might not have been all that close to before, which I think is sort of awesome. I mean, it's sad in a way, but also very, very exciting. Then they are going up to Windsor Castle for a lunch. And Prince Andrew, if you're wondering, definitely did attend the lunch. I know a lot of people don't like Prince Andrew, but he is still a member of the family and he's still technically a member of the order. So, not much we can do about that. All right, guys. Next, we have Royal Ascot. Yes, so yes, this is always a busy, busy week for the Brits because we pretty much always go from trooping to Order of the Garter to Ascot. And so this is actually a 300-year-old race and has become a national institute of Britain. It was founded in 1711 by Queen Anne. The horse race has become a foundational week in the royal calendar. And so it's always exciting to see. And I love this particular video I'm going to show here of sort of there's little placards of the faces of the monarchs, starting with Anne, ending with Queen Elizabeth. And I'm sure at some point King Charles will be added there as well. We had several attendees for the first day, including the King and Queen, Princess Anne, Zara, Tyndall, her husband Mike, Princess Eugenie, Lady Gabriella Kingston, whom we'll get back to later, Peter Phillips, and even foreign royals, Prince Philippos of Greece and his wife, Princess Nina. And we also had today Crown Princess Marie Chantal and her daughter, Princess Maria Olympia. And this is from the second day, this picture. And I love this shot. You can see Sophie here and Edward on their 25th wedding anniversary. You have Prince William, Princess Beatrice, and Princess Eugenie. And what they are doing here, if you can't catch on, is they're having fun with her tassel. And there's like pictures where they're like throwing it up or she's throwing it up. They're like messing with the tassel, which I thought was really hysterical because my cousin would do that to me. If I wore a tassel like that, the first thing he'd want to do is mess with it. So I personally absolutely love and adore this picture here. It is, I think, a great cousin moment. And Edward is kind of interesting because he's a lot younger than his older siblings. He's closer in some ways to William's age than he is to his brother. Not totally, but kind of. And so he's kind of in this weird middle spot where he's close to his siblings, but yet also not quite. He could also be close to his cousins. I have kind of an interesting situation too, because I am a lot younger than most of my cousins on my mom's side, especially. So they're almost kind of aunts and uncles, but not really. And then they have kids who are closer to my age too. And so you have this kind of weird thing where kind of everybody's cousins. And so it's kind of interesting. But I, again, love this moment. This is a great moment. And we'll get back to Lady Gabrielle Kingston, née Windsor, here in a bit. All right, next, guys, we have the commemorations of 10 years on the throne for King Felipe and Queen Letizia of Spain. And they are doing their own balcony moment there where they watched a military parade. And later in the day, they gave out honors celebrating the king's 10 years on the throne. And there were some evening events too, but we won't be able to cover those. We are just going to be covering this one. The military parade featured a fly past all of the Brits, although instead of obviously red, white, and blue like the Brits had, they had red and yellow signifying the Spanish flag, which you can see right here. And I wanted to point out here too, which I thought was really interesting. I was watching the military parade aspect and they had a drum beat going. It was actually a bit hypnotic, so I had a hard time turning it off. But what I found was super interesting about this whole military display is that there's obviously a lot of horses, much like we see with the Brits. And I thought, in the United States, we don't, as far as I'm aware, have any sort of cavalry style parade like this. And that's because because the United States is so young as a nation, yes, we had conflicts that were fought on horseback, of course, but we don't even really have that there anymore. And so I think the horses are really a great reflection of the history of, you could say warfare and travel throughout Europe, because that is what they had for a long, long time was horseback. So I just thought that was kind of a really, really cool little reflection there. And so you have King Felipe there, very tall. There's a fly past again, Princess Leonor in the red and Infanta Sofia with the long dark hair. And she has sort of a black jumpsuit on with a little cutout, which I thought, ooh, that's kind of interesting. So here they're giving out some honors there. And I feel like Princess Leonor, correct me if I'm wrong, I think she's darkened her hair because her hair didn't used to be that dark. So I think she's actually decided she wanted to color it a bit, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it'll be fascinating to see because she had more of a sun-kissed look to her hair. And so it's just funny because I was like looking at her going, your hair's a lot darker, Your Highness. And not that that's necessarily bad. And so again, like I said, there's just such a sweet, I think, relationship between Princess Leonor and Infanta Sofia, which could be really hard. Again, I say having two royal siblings can be a bit of a challenge, especially if they're the same gender, because there can be a lot more competition. And I think we got the bit where Leonor may have moved the hair, but I love this as well. There was a little speech that Sophia and Leonor gave to their parents, and they said, Mama and Papa, sorry to sneak out, but we have something to say. In these 10 years, we have learned, thanks to you, our parents, the commitment to the Spanish people. Mom and Dad, thank you. And so I will just include a little bit of their clip here again, because I just think it's so sweet. And I really love seeing how they're growing into this role.
Mamá, papá, majestades, perdón por colarnos, pero también nosotras tenemos algo que decir hoy. Gracias por acompañarnos para recordar que en estos 10 años hemos aprendido de nuestros padres lo que significa el compromiso. Mamá, papá, gracias.
And I wanted to note as well, they're thanking their mother there, Queen Letizia, moving around to thank Dad. And so I just think they have such a sweet relationship, which is really, really amazing to see, because that will bode well for them in the future. But Queen Letizia continues to utilize flats this time, thankfully. It's not sneakers, but sandals. It's evident that she's also much shorter than her daughters. Princess Leonor is wearing a bit of heels, but Sophia is in flats. So Sophia is pretty tall. She is the tallest of the three of them. But Letizia now looks much shorter, and Letizia is actually not that short either, is my understanding. I haven't seen her in person to let you know for sure. But King Felipe is 6'5". So their girls definitely got their height from their dad, because he is very, very tall. So I imagine the girls are actually pretty tall. So I look forward to maybe being able to cover a Spanish event in person at some point. But they're looking great, and I'm so glad that they have such a great family relationship, because it does bode very, very well for them. So, in very, very exciting news, at least I am very excited, we have Princess Madeleine making a triumphant return to Sweden. So, after years of living in Florida, Princess Madeleine, who is in the floral skirt here, has relocated back to Stockholm with her family, though the exact reasons aren't clear. One of obviously the probably very big concerns there is that if her children are not raised and educated in Sweden, they are not able to keep their titles. It's one of the constitutional requirements. And I think that is a constitutional requirement most monarchies should include, because if you are not raised and educated in the country where you hold your title and you have really no connection to your family, a la Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, don't understand why your children need titles of countries they know nothing about. That's just silly. And so it's probably also a desire to be home for Madeleine and closer to her family and her husband's, as his mother lives in Europe. And they have a closer connection in general to the continent. Christopher O'Neill, Princess Madeleine's husband, is a citizen of the UK and the US. And recently he acquired citizenship in Germany, which is an EU country, which probably makes this whole immigration process perhaps a bit easier. She has been photographed several times since arriving in the country, including getting off the flight. Her mother's recent birthday celebrations, of which this is a picture here, which is somewhat odd because her mother's birthday was in December, 6 months ago. She also recently attended the Stella Polaris Summit for the Organization of Childhood, of which she works. It is a charity started by her mother, Queen Sylvia, to help prevent childhood sexual abuse. So I'm so glad, guys, to have Princess Madeleine back in Sweden, because more tiara appearances, guys, which is so key. And I just really, really hope we see more of Madeleine, because I enjoy seeing her. I enjoy her fashion. So it's great to have her back in Sweden. Although I'm sure she's always like, man, I was photographed so much in Florida. Nobody knew who I was. Wasn't that lovely and amazing? So it'll be interesting to see, too, how much her children are involved with Sweden and some of the royal duties, because they weren't there for the King's Golden Jubilee, but they probably had already started school since it was in September. So anyways, guys, very, very excited, though, to have Princess Madeleine back. All right, guys, next we have Lady Gabriella Kingston née Windsor. So this return to public forum, I love Lady Gabriella Windsor. I love her style. I think it's so quintessentially British. But Lady Gabriella has had a really, really challenging year, much like William and Catherine. So her husband ended up ending his own life earlier this year. And so she has obviously been away from public life. And so he decided to do this on February 27th at his parents' home. He was only 45. And unfortunately, what sort of happened was sort of this weird nexus of things that happened just all around the same time, totally disconnected, yet got conflated together by frankly, conspiracy theorists and crazies. When he passed away, it was actually right before King Constantine's memorial service that was going to be held at St. George's Chapel at Windsor. So Lady Gabriella had to pull out, and also William had to pull out. They said Catherine didn't have a relapse, but we now understand that actually it was around the time of her first chemo treatment. So obviously she probably wasn't feeling very well. William really wanted to stay home and support her. But unfortunately, because of sort of the timing, somehow people set off this crazy, wild conspiracy theorist that maliciously melded the tragedy of Lady Gabriella Windsor and her husband, Thomas Kingston, with Prince William and Catherine and her cancer diagnosis. So some of these crazy and outrageous stories, which I want to again emphasize, that are completely and utterly crazy, had no basis in reality, was that William was responsible for Thomas's death. I kid you not. That's what some people were saying, because he had an affair with Catherine. Also, that maybe he was violent towards Catherine. Thomas were the rumors. And I want to say again, unequivocally, these are not true at all. And it's just, of course, ridiculous nonsense. But unfortunately, in certain circles, those stories have legs and they're still making the rounds. And it's just so unfair, I think, to Lady Gabriella that the tragedy that happened to her and her family somehow got just pulled in by a lot of members of the Sussex squad into what was going on with Catherine. And so I just find that incredibly sad and tragic. And so I just think it's just so sad. But I'm so glad to see her back. I love her sense of style. Again, it is quintessentially British. I love this kind of feel like she's giving maybe a little bit of a sly look there to Queen Camilla. She was in the royal box there yesterday on day one. And I wanted to share as well this lovely picture of a big hug between Zara and Lady Gabriella, because the Windsors, despite being a royal family, despite having, you could say, a huge amount of clout and presence in the world, I think at the end of the day, they're a family, and I think they are pretty close. And Harry and Meghan, unfortunately, are the outliers here. And I think there is a lot of love in the House of Windsor, but you just got to play your cards right. You have to obviously keep confidences between them, which is what they all do. When you break that, though, you sort of break that band. So I think this is a great reminder again that there's a lot of warmth within the House of Windsor. So guys, this next story is a bit of a different one, but I just wanted to end sort of on our royal news week this right here before going on to like anniversaries, birthdays, and short news. But I thought this was really interesting. So Chanel has lost its artistic director. It was sort of a sudden exit, and her name was Virginie Viard. And this actually might have some interesting implications for some royals, because the first is that Charlotte Casiraghi is a brand ambassador. She is a member of the House of Monaco, and Charlotte is a well-known figure and the daughter of Princess Caroline and the granddaughter of Grace Kelly. So her role makes sense because obviously there's a connection between France and Monaco and everything, but she also was somewhat of a muse for Virginie, so she chose Charlotte as a brand ambassador. So I'm just curious if this will continue. She was the inspiration and embodiment apparently for Chanel's fall and winter 2022-2023 pre-collection campaign. And Charlotte also famously rode her horse through the runway at one of the Chanel fashion shows. So it'll be interesting to see if Charlotte's role continues or if they amend it. There's also a question of a potential successor, as one of the options, who is apparently somewhat of a long shot, but I heard this on a video on fashion. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to mention this, is apparently Sarah Burton. So Sarah Burton is obviously the former artistic director of Alexander McQueen. And Sarah led it for over a decade after his passing, but also most famously designed the wedding dress of Princess Catherine and many, many dresses thereafter, which have gone on to live sort of in infamy. Some of Catherine's most famous looks are Alexander McQueen. So, and the women also apparently are close, because Sarah was one of the first people Catherine called / texted when Princess Charlotte's disastrous bridesmaid's dress was delivered. If you remember, Charlotte's bridesmaid's dress was a mess. Like, the hem was awful. Like, you can tell literally that they cut it the day of or something. It's wildly uneven. It looks terrible. This was at Harry and Meghan's wedding, of course. And so Sarah was one of the first people Catherine texted. This was in Harry's book. And Catherine's like, this is horrid. I've called Sarah. What can we do? We need to fix this now. And Meghan, I think, sort of dismissed her and just goes, well, just take it to the tailor. But it's like, it was still really, really bad. And this was like the day before, 2 days before you have a postpartum Catherine. And her daughter's bridesmaid's dress was really, really bad because it was still really, really, really bad at the wedding. So it will be interesting to see if Sarah moves to Chanel, potentially, because she is a free agent right now. She left Alexander McQueen last year, I believe. And she could be somebody who leads a house like that. If she became the artistic director, there's a possibility we may start seeing Catherine a bit more in Chanel. But again, that's just all supposition and theory. I just thought it was an interesting thing to mention. So next we have some anniversaries. And the first is King Carl Gustaf and Queen Sylvia of Sweden, who are celebrating 48 years of marriage. And what is so special about is that ABBA sang Dancing Queen to Her Now Majesty Queen Sylvia, who was then just Sylvia, before their wedding. And so just take a look at a little bit of their concert here.
Två queens gör officiell entré dagen innan det kungliga bröllopet 1976. Sylvia ska snart bli drottning av...
And in honor of her parents, Crown Princess Victoria and her husband, Prince Daniel, also shared the same anniversary, June 19th, with her parents. And so they got married 14 years ago. So they got married about a year before Catherine and William. Next, we have the silver anniversary of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. So that is Prince Edward and Sophie. And they have really been very much the strong presence in the monarchy. And so I'm so excited to celebrate this. And we got a couple of great pictures from Sophie and Edward. And here we'll get into some little short news updates. So to begin, we have a Prince Albert and Princess Charlene of Monaco welcoming the Olympic torch to their country. The Summer Games will be held in Paris this year. Also in attendance was Princess Caroline and her son Pierre Katsuragi, who was there with his wife Beatrice Borromeo. So I always love seeing Princess Caroline. She's looking absolutely fantastic. And Beatrice is wearing Dior, and I gotta say, I absolutely love it. And her little purse that we saw earlier, like a month or so ago, is available on the website if you're interested. Or at least it was on the Dior website. We also have Princess Beatrice attending a Spotify event in Cannes where she's talked about some of her struggles with dyslexia and what AI can bring to that scenario. We also have Louis Druquet and his wife who are expecting their second child. He is a son of Princess Stephanie of Monaco. Queen Matilda of the Belgians recently spoke at a conference on the implementation of sustainable development goals in the European Union. The event took place at the Belgian National Library. Prince Serve Magnus graduated from Elvebakken High School in Oslo. His parents and the Queen were there for the ceremony. We also have Crown Princess Mette-Marit of Norway, who is participating once again in the literacy train, which recently traveled to Elvernum. It will move on then to Alvdal and Rolos. The focus on the train is increasing literacy, as reading has many benefits to mental and physical health. Queen Maxima of the Netherlands recently attended the reopening of the renovated museum Hindellopen, which is located in, wouldn't you know it, Hindellopen. And what's interesting here in this little area is that there's actually a language to it because it was a big port, so they developed a bit of their own language. But unfortunately, it is dying out, and there's apparently only 500 people who still speak it, most of whom are elderly. Prince Julian of Sweden visited his duchy, Holland, with his parents, Prince Carl Philip and Princess Sophia. And it was to christen the Prince Julian's playground. So his cousin, Prince Nicholas, did something similar a couple of years ago. And it seems like all the Swedish children have done this at some point. They visit their duchy. They do something just to kind of bring that connection. Although the duchies are not quite as important as they are in the UK, because usually duchies are only given when the royal marries someone. We also have Princess Astrid of Belgium recently visited Norway for the Belgian Economic Summit. She met with Crown Prince Haakon and shared an afternoon tea with him, and they are actually distant relatives. We also have Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis sharing their first social media post, a picture of them with their father, Prince William, for Father's Day. And there was also a brief fire at Versailles, which required an evacuation from the palace, but doesn't really seem like there is any damage to the palace. And obviously there's a lot of concerns given what happened to the Notre Dame just a couple of years ago. We also have King Willem Alexander of the Netherlands at the TAC Blaze UK helicopter exercise there in the Carlisle's airport in the United Kingdom. The exercise that focused on training and tactical low flying in the event of a radar threat and avoiding enemy radar systems, which again gives you a little bit of concern about what the future might hold in Europe. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this edition of the Crown Report. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. And I just realized I got to the end and I put my fascinator over here because I was going to wear it for the Royal Ascot segment and I forgot. Oh well, guys, but thank you so much again for watching and I shall see you soon. Bye.